Anthony. Cool. All right. The link should be in the Jumbotron shortly, and then y'all can watch along, read along, do what you gotta do. Okay. So the first thing we're gonna do. Okay. So let's talk about what inspired this first. So how you doing, Sav? How you doing, Grace Jones? Um. So what inspired this is two things. Also, either inspired or Freedmen if you have time. Put in your tweet about lynching that went viral. And free one if you can find it. I've been looking for it. I even messaged Nordos trying to find that original tweet. Um, but Twitter search sucks, so it's hard to find. But anyways, the point I'm trying to bring up is there were two forms of inspiration that came. One from Nordos, one from Inspired. The one from Nordos was about she saw the original post in the screen about the Google engineer who used AI to identify Holocaust victims. And so she was like, she said something like, we need to do this for like lynchers. And then I replied that, they probably won't do it because they're afraid they're gonna find their ancestors in the actual photos, right? But it's something that we can do as freedmen, right? And then secondly, Inspired independently posted about lynchings and came up with the same idea. And so I think it's like really important that we honor our Freedmen Queens, Nordos, and Inspired. I want to get those tweets in the Jumbotron if we can. Yay, her tweets in the Jumbotron. So everybody go retweet her tweet if you can. It got 342 retweets, almost 1,000 likes. Um, so yeah, let's start by reading through. Oh, go for it, Freedmen. You got your hand up.
Is it Nordo's tweet? Did you share that in the chat?
Yeah, I shared it in the chat, but I can't find it. I'm like searching it on Twitter, and it's just like not coming up. So I know it's there because I posted it.
Okay.
But
I'm gonna see if I can find it.
Yeah, check the chat or check Nordos's page. I've been trying to do the little search and search for like Google and like AI, Nazi, Holocaust, Jewish, and all those things. Nothing's coming up. Twitter search sucks. Even if it's there under those words, Twitter search is not as good as Google. So we got to deal with that. But it's there, so it's definitely possible. I messaged her, so hopefully she sends it to me. Actually, let me invite her to the space too, because I know she was busy earlier today with the whole protest, Power 106 protest. But I'll at least make sure that she's aware of it. What up, A Boogie? Okay, so let's start. Google engineer identifies anonymous faces in World War II photos with AI facial recognition. Walking past the countless photos of Holocaust survivors and victims at Warsaw's Poland Museum of the History of Polish Jews in 2016, the New York native Daniel Pat was haunted by the possibility that he was passing the faces of his own relatives without even knowing it. For Pat, a 40-year-old software engineer now working for Google, that sort of conundrum presented the potential for a creative solution. And so he set to work creating and developing from numbers to names, end to end, an artificial intelligence driven facial recognition platform that can scan through photos from pre war Europe and the Holocaust, linking them to people living today. Pat has a personal stake in the project. Three of his four grandparents are Holocaust survivors from Poland, and he wants to help his grandmother find photos of the members of her family murdered by the Nazis. She was just 9 years old when the war started and fled from her hometown of Zomask East Ward with her father and siblings, while her mother, Pat's great grandmother, stayed behind. Her mother was shot and killed during the Nazi invasion, and Pat's great uncle, his grandmother's brother, was subsequently killed when he went back to rescue her. The rest of the family survived and immigrated to New York City after the war. Currently, the end-to-end software, which is free and simple to use, only returns the 10 best potential matches that it can find in the database available to it. Though not yet perfect, the nonprofit project has already seen great success. The software has been used to search through hundreds of thousands of photos to identify faces for the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum USHMM, as well as individual survivors and descendants of survivors, including a number of celebrities. Pat, who only works on the project on his own time and with his own resources, has now been joined by a growing team of engineers, data scientists, and researchers who are constantly expanding the reach and accuracy of the software. In addition to the photos and videos currently available to the platform, Pat is working for end-to-end to gain access to 700,000 more photos from the pre-Holocaust and Holocaust eras. The Times of Israel interviewed Pat over email on June 26. Holocaust Survivor Day, a newly minted annual commemoration that celebrates the achievements of Holocaust survivors who have rebuilt their lives and gone on to greatness in response to Hitler's attempt to eradicate the Jewish people. The following interview has been slightly edited. How did you get the inspiration for numbers to names, and what is your goal? Pat: I started this project after visiting the Poland Museum of the History of Polish Jews in Warsaw, Poland in 2016. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had potentially walked past a photo of a family member without even knowing it. I'm the grandson of Holocaust survivors, all from Poland. The museum is filled with walls of photos of survivors and victims, but there were only a handful of names to go with them. One of my grandmothers is now 91. I would like to help her find photos of her immediate family who were murdered by the Nazis. I thought perhaps other Holocaust descendants might want to potentially do the same for their aging grandparents. I'm a software engineer and thought I could build something to help with this family search process. This was the original motivation for creating From Numbers to Names. Looking ahead, we'd like for End-to-End to become a vehicle for Holocaust education, giving students an opportunity to directly contribute to the historical record. Students can use the software to help identify faces and artifacts in photo and video archives and potentially discover new connections between living Holocaust descendants and their ancestors. Can you tell us about some successes the platform has had so far? We reached out to Giddy Lee from Rush with a photo we thought was of his mother. He was able to confirm this was indeed a photo of her at the displaced persons camp at Bergen-Belsen. Getty was then able to subsequently discover photos of his grandmother, uncles, and aunt, and other extended family by browsing the Yad Vashem collection where the initial photo came from. Hungarian Jews, after disembarking from transport trains at Auschwitz, May 1944. In addition to our proactive identification work, some of which has been published on the USHMM website, we've also heard about other identification through various online channels and through organizations such as 3GNY. We've analyzed nearly 500,000 photos so far, containing around 2 million faces, and there's a backlog of potential identifications we're manually going through now. For users coming to the site, how does it work? What is required for them to use it? For people coming to the site, they can click on Select an Image. They can select a file from their computer or phone containing a cropped photo of a single face. Then they can click on the Search button, which will show them 10 photos containing the most similar faces to the one provided by the user. The software works best when searching using photos that are roughly from the same time period. We have no software-based assertions about identifications and leave this judgment to individuals using the site. We simply show the results with similarity scores and let individuals decide whether the results contain a positive identification. We're not all software engineers here, but can you tell us a little bit about how the software works? The software leverages AI, artificial intelligence, to help Holocaust descendants discover images of their loved ones and identify the millions of unidentified faces in Holocaust photo and video archives. We proactively look to identify faces using AI and also provide a way for people to conduct their own research as well through numberstonames.org website. Are you partnered with a Holocaust museum or other organizations? How are you trying to grow your database? We've been in contact informally with USHMM. So far, we've shared a number of identifications which have since been confirmed and published on the USHMM website. We'd like to partner with museums, schools, research institutions, and other organizations which share common goals around Holocaust education, awareness, and so on. In terms of growing the database, we've begun analyzing videos from the Steven Spielberg film and video archive. We're also creating a way for verified student and research users to provide annotations and identifications directly on the platform. You only use your own resources for this project. Finances must be something of a hurdle. The cost of providing quick search results increases as we analyze more photos and now historical videos. We're about to release an offline search experience also, which allows users to get their search results within a day instead of within seconds as a way of keeping costs down. We have a fiscal sponsorship with a foundation of philanthropic funds as well to help cover costs. Other than money, what are the biggest challenges facing end to end? Limited time. We have been developing the project over the course of evenings and weekends over many months. There is an urgency to this effort as the last remaining survivors pass, and there are many connections that could still be made. We hope that end to end can help build those connections while the survivors are still with us. So that's the first thing I want to share. The second thing is just the website from numbers to names so y'all can see what that looks like. And then we'll look at lynching photos and then go open up the discussion. Okay, so here's the website. Okay, so this is from numbers to names. This is the website. We got a menu up here. You can click about, sign up, sign in, subscribe, FAQ. Discover loved ones and relatives lost in the Holocaust. You can select an image, upload an image. You click search once you put the image in there, and then search the photographs collections using an image of a family member. Please sign up to run a full search. See menu. New tools for Holocaust research. From numbers to names provides a new way to explore Holocaust photo and video archives through AI. We are a team of engineers, data scientists, and researchers helping to discover new insights and identifications through this effort. Developments. Most of the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum's photograph collections, containing more than 34,000 photos, is now searchable by the Discovery tool, but there are nearly 1 million additional photos that can be used to improve the scope and quality of the tool. Please subscribe to the mailing list to follow the latest news on these and related development efforts. So I'm not going to go through everything, but I wanted to show y'all kind of what it looks like. You know, um, obviously this is specific to the Holocaust, but like we mentioned earlier, the insight that came from Nordo's inspired and even Freedmen was how could we use this for finding out lynchers who potentially killed our ancestors or other freedmen's ancestors, and then also their living descendants, so that prosecutions can be done and reparations can be provided. And there's also Friedman brought up the point that we could even use it to identify freedmen that may not have been identified in the actual lynchings. So we're gonna start by doing a Freedmen Party initiative. The goal is to take. Okay, so let me switch to the lynching photos really quickly. Share screen. And where is Google? Here we go. Okay, so for example, if y'all can see my screen, look at all these faces. These are identifiable faces. This person, this person, this person, this person. These little kids who are probably adults or grandchildren now, or grandparents now. We keep going. This woman here, this man here. The people identified in this photo. So our goal essentially is to build up a database of as many lynching photos as we can. Google has like millions of them. So we can start using public databases, but we can also draw from private databases, museums. We have the African American History Museum in DC. There's tons of museums around the country that we could draw from. Um, so basically, what we're going to do, my superpowers are software and technology. I studied computer science and robotics, so I know how to do artificial intelligence, build software. Um, so one of the comments I made when Nordos posted about the AI researcher that was doing the Holocaust stuff was, I don't believe that anybody from Google is going to do this for us. And the reason I said that is because their ancestors are probably the ones in this photo, right? Like Google only hires about 8% of its population are African American, and probably out of that 8%, probably only 2% are freedmen. Um, and so we have to develop this ourselves. We think it could be an initiative within the party. We're working on starting a GoFundMe right now. You can donate to our Cash App. I'll Freedmen or Inspired. If you could put the freedmen.party/donate link in the Jumbotron, that would be helpful. Um, but basically, we want our ability to come up with all of these photos, build a database, build a database of photos of European Americans that are living today, and then being able to match features with the software that we develop. This will again help us identify not only lynchers, but where possible, freedmen who were lynched that may have not been identified ever, right? So it's a two-sided thing, and um, I think it's a great effort that we should undertake. It'll take probably like 3 to 6 months, um, and it's really just a function of how much we get in donations, because we need to store about. I mean, they had 34,000, and they are trying to get to 1 million. There are about at least 1 million lynching photos that have these white supremacists in them, as well as some of our freedmen ancestors. So what we'd like to do is we got to spend money on databases, basically, collecting all those photos, and then we got to use computers, like multiple servers, to run the algorithm that we develop to then create the matches. So that does cost money. Everything else, like in terms of developing the software, I'm just going to develop it for free. But we do at least need to help cover the cost of the databases and the servers. And we'll basically create a website or a page on our current Freedmen Party website where you'll be able to go upload a photo of one of your ancestors or just a photo of a lynching, and then we'll be able to try to match that with the database that we've created. Um, so yeah, that's the basic intro. I'm going to open it up to my amazing co-hosts, Inspired and Freed One, and get their thoughts. Then we'll go to the rest of the people in the space. So feel free to join, come up to speak, and share any feedback or thoughts, and then we can go from there.
Okay, I'm looking for the real fast. I'm looking for the our GoFundMe really fast, but I do want to say the most important thing I feel from that article is that they did it for themselves.
Exactly.
They developed that database for
exactly.
And one of the things that I was talking about in the space why I feel like my ancestors are calling us out to this is we have to make our Holocaust real.
Exactly.
We are a proud people. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm driving in the rain. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Keep going.
Can y'all still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear. Oh, yeah, we can hear you. Okay. Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. But we talking about when Nazis are arrested and tried, these are 100-year-old people. And these people, grandchildren, nieces, and nephews that really didn't necessarily go through the pain of the Holocaust, and trust me, it was pain just like ours.
Right.
They still cry.
Yep.
They cry and they experience. So we have to make it real for ourselves so that we can transfer that in our fight for reparations. If we don't feel that pain, how are we expecting someone else to understand what we're going through? And that's why I feel like it is so important at this time. And I'm going to go find
Yeah, I agree 100% with you, and I appreciate the help. Um, I really love the tweet that you put out. Would you would you like to talk about what inspired you to put out that tweet? Um, and then we'll go to free one.
Really, really what happened was I was trying to understand, and I'm going to say this without trying to cry because I don't know what it is. I really feel my ancestors are pushing this because I have a whole plan with this lynching thing in reference to, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But why I put the tweet out is because why can we not get any substantial legislation when it comes to it?
Oh, you cut off a little bit. Why can't we get any legislation when it comes to? So we'll get you back. I know you're driving in the rain, so the rain is hating. Yeah, she's in the Matrix. Oh yeah, she's in the Matrix. But yeah, you said we don't have legislation. You got cut off a little bit. Inspired.
The Asian bill, they got funds to help stop Asian hate.
Right.
We would get funding as well, and one of the aspects.
Yeah, she may not know she's a little bit in the Matrix. But yeah, free one. If you can message her and let her know, like, but yeah, we'll make sure we get what she said. You said the legislation, then you got cut off a little bit, then you came back in. Do you mind just restarting that part, Inspired? Or maybe she's still in the Matrix. I go for a free one, then we'll come back to her.
Yeah, right now I'm just trying to find that tweet. I can't find it. If you could remember any keywords in the tweet, let me know. But yeah, I'm excited to use this facial recognition. We should be able to get the funding to make this happen.
Definitely.
Get our ancestors to justice, justice. If Nazis can be tracked down, tried, like years later, we can do the same thing for lynching participants.
Definitely.
So anybody who participated in our genocide, they need to face
the consequences.
Justice for their crimes they committed.
Yep.
They don't deserve any passes. So that's my take on that.
Definitely agree with that. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. We got Inspired back. Let's bring her back up. Inspired, you got cut off a little bit in the Matrix. You were saying we don't have specific legislation. Then you got Matrixed, and then you came back a little bit, and then Matrixed again. So if you want to just start over from the legislation part. Yeah.
Yes. Can y'all hear me a little bit better?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, real quick. I just want to know, what is the reason why we can't get any legislation, substantive legislation with money behind it, is because the people that are in those photos, we will be prosecuting them. We will be looking at actually their ancestors. I really believe there's a connection, and that's all. Did y'all hear that?
Yeah, we heard that, and I definitely agree. That goes to my point about why Google wouldn't do it, or why like the same type of engineer who developed that software wouldn't do it for this application. It's because the people that are working at these places are like almost 98% black, or sorry, 98% white, and they're more than likely to find some of their ancestors in these photos, and they don't want that smoke. So we have to recognize that it's up to us to seek and to follow through to get the justice our ancestors deserve. And the fact that we have the skill set and we can put together our money to get this done, I think would be a great thing. It'll be like opening up more Emmett Till cases, like opening up, finding more Carolyn Bryans. You know what I mean? So we have to understand that it's our responsibility. No one's gonna. I mean, she's been skipping justice for 67 years. And we know who she is. So let's. You can imagine, what we're gonna need to go through once we find out all these other living descendants, or even people who may be still alive that committed the lynching themselves, just like Carolyn. So.
And another thing, Freedmen, I wanted to say, y'all can hear me?
Yep.
Back in the Matrix.
Yeah, we can hear.
They they have memorabilia that they're passing down generations from these lynchings. So when we talk about allies, that's the type of ally. Bring us our family, our freedmen, whatever memorabilia you have in good faith, so that we can let them rest in peace. They have body parts that they're passing down. This is real. We have to make this real for us so that we can cry. When we stand at those courts, we can cry like the other people that experience the Holocaust does. But I'm going to go ahead back.
Yeah, we need to have that same level of realization that we are experiencing genocide, right? And it's been a genocide that has been continued over 400 years. So, the Holocaust existed during World War II. We've had our own war against freedmen for 400 plus years, right? So the level of genocide, the level of harm is multiplied, right? There's about, we looked up the other day, there's about 93 million living descendants of the Homestead Act, which are mainly colonial Europeans, right? Still in America. So out of those 93 million, there is a large portion of that committed these lynchings, and they're still here, right? Probably still chilling on these homesteads, right? So we need to go prosecute each and every one of them. These are like living Nazis, living Confederates, living KKK members. The KKK was founded by the Confederates that lost the war in 1865. After the war was lost in 1865, the same year we got the Freedmen's Bureau, the Freedmen's Bank, and the Reconstruction Acts, the KKK was founded on Christmas, mind you. So that just goes to show you how insidious they are and how much they don't care. And the memorabilia you mentioned is just all more evidence that we can use to prosecute. Now, this is why there's even museums. I think it was a Vice or Vox show where they were going into like a kind of like a Jim Crow museum slash like lynching museum type of thing, where it's like white people had collected all of these mementos and stuff, and were like showing them off all proudly. They had their old excuse. Oh, it's just history and this and this. But at the end of the day, all of this is evidence. There is no statute of limitations on genocide. There are no statute of limitations on violations of humanitarian and international humanitarian law. And murder obviously has no statute of limitations. So we can prosecute any living body, and anybody that's a descendant, we can prosecute for reparations, or perhaps even conspiracy if they conspired along with them. Even someone like Carolyn Bryan's son right now is aiding and abetting a criminal fugitive, right? So we have to understand, like, we need to throw the book at these people. They should not feel free walking around in this country after committing these atrocities. We need to have our modern Nuremberg trial in America for Freedmen genocide. We could come up with a different name, but what we need to do is literally not only just hashtag stop Freedmen genocide, but go and develop our own software with the party's resources, with donations, and literally build our own tool to do this ourselves. And then we can bring this to the DOJ. We could bring this to Congress, bring this to the president, and ask for maybe this should be part of reparations as well, but this could also be separate. But basically have a committee that goes through and actually investigates these lynchings, right? No one should feel free having committed a lynching and should be able to just sit back and retire. That's not how this should work. In fact, the U.S., I'll pull this up, the U.S. definition of genocide really quickly, just to, because it blew my mind when I learned about the United Nations definition of genocide. But when I found the U.S. law from genocide, shout out to Don for bringing that to our attention. When I learned about that, it just kind of share that screen real quick. Give me 1 second. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so this is the U.S. law on genocide, right? This is stored by Cornell.edu, so you know it's legit, right? So basic offense: whoever, whether in time of peace or in time of war, and with specific intent to destroy, in whole or in substantial part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group, as such, one, kills members of that group, which is lynchings and massacres. Two, causes serious bodily injury to members of that group, which is physical and mental harm. Three, causes the impairment of the mental faculties of members of that group through drugs, torture, or similar techniques. So, yeah, this is the mental harm part. Four, subjects the group to conditions of life that are intended to cause the physical destruction of the group in whole or in part. That's apartheid. And five, imposes measures intended to prevent births within the group, which is extermination. And then six, transfers by force children of the group to another group, which is family separation. And as freedmen, we meet every criteria. In fact, just in the case of Emmett Till, which there's two acts of genocide, they killed Emmett Till, and they transferred a child from one group to another group to commit the killing, right? So that's two acts of genocide. Now now here's what is amazing. Unlike the UN definition of genocide, the US has specific punishments for genocide. So punishment for basic offense. The punishment for an offense under subsection A, which basically means you killed someone, in the case of an offense under subsection A1, where death results, you need the death penalty or imprisonment for life and a fine of not more than $1 million or both, right? So let's take the Emmett Till case, right? That's one act of genocide which anybody who participated deserves capital punishment or life imprisonment, depending on their state, and a fine of $1 million. Um, and then if we want to talk about Carolyn Bryan, who may try to wiggle out of this part of it, let's go down to either incitement or attempt and conspiracy, right? And I think she falls more under attempt and conspiracy. Incitement offense says whoever directly and publicly incites another to violate subsection A, which is genocide, shall be fined not more than $500,000 or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both. Now, that sounds kind of weak, but attempt and conspiracy gets back to where we need to get back to. Any person who attempts or conspires to commit an offense under this section shall be punished in the same manner as a person who completes the offense. So, taking Carolyn Bryan, for example, she participated in the conspiracy that lynched and murdered Emmett Till, right? That means going back to B, punishment for basic offense, and one, she deserves death or imprisonment for life and a fine of not more than $1 million. And then for the punishment for kidnapping Emmett Till, that would fall under this as well, but under it would be a lesser crime, but it would be added to the crime of attempted conspiracy. So she gets the same charges as the people who actually did it. So just because her husband did it and she wasn't there to like punch Emmett Till, that doesn't mean she's not a part of attempted conspiracy, right? Any person who attempts or conspires to commit an offense shall be punished basically as if you had done it, right? And then with all of these lynchings, they're all number one, kills members of that group. So they all should result in capital punishment or imprisonment for life and a fine of $1 million per act of genocide. Not just like all lynchings are $1 million. No, every act of genocide. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with y'all because I think it's super important we know these laws and know these rules. They're not told to us. We don't learn about them in school, and it's a shame. So yeah, let's get some more thoughts in here. Feel free to raise your hand so I can help keep track of the speakers. But I do want to go to people on this stage right now. I'm sending more mics out. Black by popular demand, then Sab, then Grace, then Aduba you. So what are your thoughts, Black by popular demand? You still there? Now we'll go to Sav. Sav, what are your thoughts?
So basically, I'm just looking at it from a different worldview perspective. Germans, they just they touch their Nazis. We embrace ours. We coddle and we protect ours.
Right.
And it's common and it's evident to this day. So that's how I feel. I'm actually a little really annoyed right now because just looking at just because I was curious and we going after men that's 101, 102, 103.
Right.
Knocking on heaven's door, or excuse me, hell's door.
Right.
And this lady, she got. I can't even talk right now, but yeah. So sorry, y'all. Thinking about something else, but yeah. So basically, we have an issue of them flaunting it in our face that they don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you talk about issues such as critical race theory, like this is what critical race theory is, right? This is the true history and whatnot. Now, Little Jimmy feel bad because his grandpa was a murderer. That's not on me.
Exactly.
I don't care to protect Little Jimmy's feelings. This is his history. He should know it, so he knows not to repeat it. But love, if we could, get something like this, similar to, love, like I mentioned before, the Lovecraft Country, like the interactive museum space, like that would be really, really cool if people could be able to go and, share any kind of photos, images, and be able to leave out with more information. That's kind of easier, in my opinion, and I don't think maybe the museums that we have would be rocking with that. So we might have to create a whole new, our own little metaverse, or not metaverse, but museum. So, but yeah, thank you, Free Party.
Yeah, Sav, I think the idea of like a digital museum that actually not just has pictures of people being lynched, but is actually doing the work to find the lynchers. That's how a museum should be used, not just to be, glorifying the lynchers. You know what I mean? We should be actually doing the justice so that we can say, this is this person, right? This person here in this photo, his name is here. His descendants own this bank, this thing, and they were recently prosecuted in this case and were forced to pay reparations, or were prosecuted and thrown in jail or received capital punishment. That's what I would like to see, Sav. Sorry, I think.
Sorry, I wanted to throw this out.
Yeah, go for it.
I wanted us to kind of think about this. Ahmaud Arbery, he was lynched by a mob. The daughter of the lynchers Snapchatted his lifeless body while he was dying on the street. She was not prosecuted. Because we do not expose the lynchers and the lynch mob mentality. We have to make this real for them. And if we got to start there, we got to start here. But we have to do it for ourselves. They're not going to do it. Because, if they would have prosecuted her and charged her, then guess what? These postcards will be right back here. I don't know who is in these pictures, but I guarantee it's somebody.
Yep. 100%. All of these people need to be prosecuted. How you doing, Camilla Moore and April? We're talking about how we can use AI to do facial recognition on lynching photos and videos archives, and use that to identify living either descendants or the living lynchers, and then to use that as a way to prosecute them for an act of genocide, which we just read through the U.S. law for, as well as making sure that reparations to any of, if there's only living descendants of those lynchers, that they are forced to pay reparations. Now,
and there's civil lawsuits that what I'm thinking, what my goal is. I hope I'm not in the matrix, guys, but if you can find a local lynching in your area, bring that to your city council and have them formally apologize or acknowledge these things. We need to, even if we're starting there, we need all points, everywhere. This is because Ahmaud Arbery, they Snapchatted his body and she was not charged. Why?
Exactly. I was going to say basically she needs to be charged under genocide, under at least contempt and attempt and conspiracy, because anyone who is negligent in not helping someone who is being attacked when they are part of the family that is attacking and killing and lynching someone, they are aiding and abetting. So that's attempt and conspiracy, and she should be charged under that. Let's go. Let's go to Grace Jones, and then we'll go back to Sav. I see you have your hand up. We'll go for it, Sav, if you have your thought on the top of your head.
Yeah, no, basically I was saying, I mean, if you can find the one, then you can get the others, because 9 times out of 10, they were all either friends, family, cousins.
Exactly.
And so that has to be known. I mean, to say that we got to get every single one, we all probably need to get about like 1 or 2 or 3. And I in high school, again, I went on this trip down south, and I got to meet Elizabeth Edward. She was one of the Little Rock Nine.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so, and even with her images, the lady that you see the girls spitting on her, they all said it. The people that was in the picture with them are classmates, so they know the people that they were with, you know. So even if we can, you know, find 1 or 2, and then also too, you were talking about just like going to our mayors and political people with these, of course, and keeping a record too. If we could get a book of this, because you know, just again, it'd be kind of cool if we could get like a book, and then or / like a green book too, just so we can keep like a modern day notice of what's been going on. Like I don't know if y'all saw the swimming pool thing. Like that's what kind of irritated me. These kids were trying to go to a pool party, and like it's separate from lynching, but like just like it, you know. Sorry, y'all get what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. So you made me think of a few things. So one, this is why these people are afraid of CRT, right? Critical race theory, because they know that these photos of them spitting, hitting, beating up. You know that dude who was getting punched while he was walking away, and they kept hitting him in the head. That's on video. So when you also mentioned the school and that they were spitting at, we can go and look at the school records and look at the enrollment, who was enrolled in the schools. Let's narrow it down. We can access that type of information. So that'll help. Who were the kids in the school? Who were their families? And then we can look down their family trees. And then the other thing you made me think of was The Red Record by Ida B. Wells. She created a catalog of lynchings that were happening in the country and basically cataloged them to make sure that these names and these occurrences came out. She was one of the first of our freedmen ancestors, our freedmen queens, that put a spotlight on this genocide that's happening against freedmen. And then last but not least, when you mentioned the Green Book, I think that's a great idea. We're kind of building a digital version of that in terms of like what we were creating with the boycott system. We built the repatriation thing first, but it's going to be similar to the repatriation system. But the idea would basically be you can put places, you can click on a map and say, this is where freedmen businesses I want to support. And you'll be able to toggle the map to get the map of all the businesses who are practicing genocide against freedmen and discrimination and apartheid against freedmen. And then you'll be able to see that. And that'll be like the virtual Green Book. So I agree with you 1,000,000%. I think that's great ideas. Those won't cost any money, but the AI software development that we need to do and paying for servers in the databases to store like tens of thousands, millions of photos is going to cost some money. But it's totally doable, and it's doable within a few months. Like this is something we can accomplish ideally by the end of the year, or at very late have it be ready to start the new year off. And while we're going, we're going to be able to test it and find results as we go. But to have like a tool that really works well is going to take at least 3 to 6 months. I would suspect 3 at the fastest, 6 depending on how much support we have. But yeah, Grace Jones, what are your thoughts so far on all of this?
I'm going to just have to go back and listen again because I'm listening in trauma
So
Yeah.
all kinds of bells and whistles are going off in my head.
Right.
One of them is like, we can't even really get people prosecuted for the lynchings that occurred yesterday. So I don't know how. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I don't see a path forward on that from what I know now, unless we're going to slide in off of the prosecutions we recently had, like y'all were talking about, Derek Chauvin and the father and son team who murdered Ahmaud Arbery. But then there's also a sexual thing to this, because like when Chauvin was murdering George Floyd, a lot of people say he was, masturbated and everything, and I know that it was rumored that he and his wife were together that night also. So this runs straight head into the LGBT, and all the other letters that fall behind various sexual dysfunctions, storing of our men's penises and all that other stuff. But so are you just going to build up a campaign to like put pressure on the government? Because I don't know, I might have missed it. I'm not sure what we're doing here.
Yeah, so basically we're going to develop within the party's software. I'm gonna help write and build the AI bot that analyzes all the photos and then matches them with either people who are living that committed those or their living descendants. And then Freedmen brought up the point that we can also use it to potentially identify people who are lynched that may have not been identified. And then we have a multi-pronged way of approaching the results. So we can bring them to Congress, to the DOJ, and then to the justice system. But we also can prosecute with civil and our own criminal cases as well. There's no statute of limitations on murder. There's no statute of limitations on acts of genocide. And there's no statute of limitations on violations of humanitarian law or international humanitarian law. Also, what you said about
you made a really great point. Go ahead, Freedman. I'm
no,
sorry.
just one last thought I was going to say. You mentioned we can't even prosecute the people who were lynched yesterday. Well, if we took the same approach about lynchings that happened in the past, when Emmett Till was lynched, we wouldn't be fighting for Emmett Till right now. We'd be like, well, Emmett Till was lynched 67 years ago. Ain't nothing gonna ever happen. Ain't nothing happened in 67 years. So I think that's a defeatist attitude, and the whole point behind that, why that attitude is even brought to bear, is because they don't want us to prosecute these cases, and we shouldn't give.
I don't say it in that context.
No, I know you're not. I know you're not. But I'm just saying that the entire goal of them is to discourage us from even prosecuting these crimes. So I know you were saying that.
Yeah, I acknowledge that. And while we're doing this, we're laying the basis. Asian hate crime bill was written, and it was written after some incidents after COVID. We have a documented history of hate, and we still do not have a hate bill with money behind it. So we can do things like AI, because that would be something that we would be able to use this money for, and also to protect and educate. I don't know what's critical about our history is history, but we're in critical times. And yes, we have to lay down a basis. This is all inducive of what we're doing for reparations.
Definitely. Like, imagine if Jet.com didn't, or not Jet.com, but imagine if Jet Magazine didn't post that photo of Emmett Till. Imagine if all the other people at the time didn't fight for justice then. We probably would never have heard of Emmett Till again. And that's the sad truth of it. He could have been forgotten from history. And there are many names that we need to go back to and resurrect so that they get the justice that they deserve. So this is something that is gonna take at least a generation to accomplish. Hopefully, with this AI tool, we can speed up so it doesn't take the amount of man hours to look through millions of photos and do the matchings. Right? With AI, it could be done within minutes, or like they were saying, like within a day, searching all through the database.
So how much would we need altogether?
I would say estimating the cost of the database and the servers that we're going to need to run the algorithm is going to be like $1,000 to $2,000. 1,000 for the database and another 1,000 for the servers. Both of them are just like we got to pay um, to store all of this because you couldn't store all these photos on like one computer. Like it would be great if I could just store it on my computer. There's just not the amount of data. These are like petabytes of data, not just gigabytes. Petabytes, which is like way more, and um, that costs money, and we can cover that cost, but we won't have to pay for labor. You know, I'm going to sink my time into this. Like I didn't charge Marcel to do 100K robocalls. I did it because I wanted to see him win, and I built the software for free. So it's really just covering the cost of the databases and the servers, and I would say like 2,000 could cover the basic minimum cost, so we can get around 1 million photos, and then to be able to process those photos against a database of about as many photos, like millions of social media profile pictures and all this that exists of these European descendants. And obviously we don't need to raise this all from one person. Just pitch in $1 if you can. It all helps. And this is work we're going to be doing over months. So even if you can't afford to pitch in now, you can pitch in later, or just spread the word. You can add photos to the database. You know what I mean? So if you have photos that you want us to look into, that helps as well. So I hope that answers your question.
I mean, what they say, the next revolution won't be televised. It'll be online. It's really best that we don't get behind on the coding curve, right? Because a lot of what we need in our tools that we need to be built have not been built yet. And so it's interesting enough when we look back at everything that was put in place to help try to stop this point right now, right? No Child Left Behind. Yep. Lead paint houses. Like, I mean, I can keep going. The policies that were intentionally created and enacted to stop us from being so quote unquote smart, right?
Right.
These niggas can read, right? Period. And that's what I think is beautiful about the space and about the people that's trying to create this. So I went ahead and said 15. I plan on doing it weekly.
Thank you.
Just because this is something that I think that can happen. So if someone can match my 15, that'll be awesome. Because again, we don't have the tools yet that we'll need in order to create and to win this revolution. So I definitely am backing this.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for that.
Those of us that make our little small dollar donations, when we see the final tallies, we're not impressed. So I'm not trying to sound preachy, but if we're going to do this, I really would appreciate everybody putting in whatever little bit they can, because we should be able to come up with $2,000.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely possible, and I appreciate the support. Thank you, Sav. Thank you, Grace Jones. And really, this is the thing. The amount of like money, like I could put screenshots in the Jumbotron. Like Google emails me like monthly trying to hire me, and I refuse to work for big tech. I refuse to sell out to people who are not serving our people. And I would rather use my intelligence to further our causes. First and foremost, the Freedmen Party. We got the Freedmen News Network, and then we're trying to do the Freedmen Super PAC next. We need to pool our vote, our voices, and our value together. And to me, it's the most rewarding work I've ever done in my life. Just to see kind of the progress we've even made in the last 6 months is impressive to me, or 7 months now. And the fact that this idea can be accomplished, like if I was an asshole like Google, like the Google engineer, they get paid tens of thousands of dollars a month, like 10 to 15K a month. So he used his salary from Google to basically fund his research. I'm not taking a salary from Google because I don't want to sell out. I'd be working on trying to make you click on ads faster. This is like, what the hell? I would be building AI software to make you click on ads. That's not how best I can spend my time, and definitely not how I can serve my people. So this to me though is super exciting. Like the robo, now that we built, like I initially built the robocall software for just for candidates, but we realized that we could use that for way more. We've been using it. We used it for the Jalen Walker to contact the sheriffs, and we used it for the Emmett Till, for Aunt Lai, for ACA 3 to end slavery, involuntary servitude in California. So now we can use it for offense and defense. So whether it's pushing candidates or getting, that whether it's pushing candidates or whether it's doing these calls to actions, it's multi-purpose. And the same with this AI tool for facial recognition. We can use it to identify lynchers and their descendants, and then we can use it to identify freedmen who were lynched and their descendants. So it's a multi-purpose tool. The only difference is you need a database for all the lynchers, a database for the freedmen. So I think it's first and foremost we want to identify the lynchers so we can prosecute them, and then most of the lynchings that are on that have records have some identification that go along with them because the families, obviously knew that their family member had been lynched, and people like Ida B. Wells, I say Ida Tubman, Ida B. Wells, and her red record, she kept track of the lynchings, and the freedmen who were being lynched. So these are records that we can go to as well. Like we could look up something from the red record and see if there's photographs from that, or if there was any newspaper clippings from that time period that reference the lynching, and then use that as tools as well. So wherever we can get the data from, we're just going to build these databases and then run it on a server so we can get all the results that we need. And I like that what they did, what the dude did for the Holocaust thing, where he was showing you results, and then you can kind of also judge for yourself, and you get a score, like a confidence result, like there's an 80% match, 90% match. You know what I mean? Where you can like, okay, actually that is my granddad, or oh, actually, because think about it, there's going to be two ways. Unlike the Nazi version of this, we have to go after people who don't want to be identified. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a twofold thing. There's going to be freedmen who want to find their ancestors that may have been lynched, but there's also going to be where we have to do our own work to find the living descendants of the lynchers, because they're not going to want to be, identified by their own will. At least that's my prediction, right? Like, I don't see them saying, "Yeah, that was my granddad." You know what I mean? So we got to do it ourselves on that side of things, but that just makes it all the more the fight. That's worth fighting. Freed one, and then we'll go to the build or refuse.
Now I remember, okay, this discussion. My point is we use the facial recognition so we can locate not our ancestors that were lynched, but just in general finding our ancestors. Like if we're trying to do like say your genealogy or your lineage, you can use that. Say if you have photos and you don't know names, you can use that to try to find and locate who these people are within your lineage or whatnot. Mm-hmm. Now I remember. Okay.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point, and it goes back to the part of like how we can use the software for multiple things other than just finding lynchers and their descendants. We can use it to find people who weren't even lynched, and we just don't have the family tree built up yet, right? So it could just be a photo, like from the past, and basically, whether or not they were lynched, we could still be able to identify their living descendants and try to help build people's family trees up. So yeah, I think these are all great ideas, and once we build this one tool, it can just be used in multiple ways. The only thing we would have to change is the database.
I mean, and also too, once you get it to work for what it's supposed to work for, what you're sharing, the state and the mission, while you're raising the money, it can even be helpful to do the police job for them.
Yeah.
Parents, running up on people, or little slow joke that and they don't know who that is because he don't have a social media, right? So definitely rocking with it. Now, my only thing is too, when we look at it from a practical lens, that can be easy, right? Facebook, Instagram, any photo a person put up
Exactly.
for the public. So that is something that, again, we can really use to expand it once it's already built for what it's primarily used for, but expanding it.
Hey, you just made me think of too. We should start using yearbook photos. Like, go back through your yearbook and find these people.
Or don't even get started. Like, there's some white people out here that really feel guilty about this. Like, bring your family photo books.
Right. If you want to be an ally, bring your family. Like, what are those, like, photo albums, right? Like, where got all your pictures and stuff like that. So I agree 1,000,000%.
Bring those hoods that y'all have. And that's kind of true.
I remember just a few years ago, I was working doing a presentation for the public, and this old white man just sat next to me and just started talking about Emmett Till's dad.
Wow.
And said something about that. It was almost like he was implying that Emmett Till's dad did something and they went after Emmett because of it. And I was just sitting there shocked, like I don't know what, because it was such an unsolicited comment. So it's just like they just spill the beans out of nowhere sometimes.
Yeah, it's that guilt. It's that guilt. They say whatever you do in the dark will come to the light, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, these people can't hide from these atrocities, and we're gonna get the justice that we deserve. I fully believe that, and we just got to keep the faith and put in the work. Let's go to the diamond that the builder refused, or the stone that the builder refused. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going, y'all?
What up? I ain't gonna dox you.
No, this is cool.
Thank you.
So I missed the beginning. I was gonna ask for kind of like a recap or stuff, but I think maybe we can, if you're open, like I'd be totally down to just meet with you one-on-one.
Totally.
Just talk through ideas or whatever.
Yeah.
But no, this is super cool because, and I still kind of want a synopsis in terms. I'm just super curious about like what compelled you to, center for this conversation, and then like your other efforts around like identifying lynchers. I think that's just extremely prolific and brilliant and very smart. So I'm just really curious about your, the impetus behind the decision, like what inspired you, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So those are great questions, and just to give everyone some kind of updates. So it started with kind of like 2 points of interest. The first was Nordo. She was the first person that I saw tweet out about the whole AI, the Google engineer who used AI to identify victims of the Holocaust. He had went to a museum, saw all these photos. He was like Polish, and so he had went to this Poland Holocaust museum and realized that he could use his software skills to build a facial recognition software to help identify people in the photos. And then Nordos tweeted out something like, "We need this for us." Freedmen brought it to my attention, and then I replied to Nordos' tweet that I did 2 tweets. I said, one, like, they're not going to do it. Like, Google engineers aren't going to do this because they're probably afraid they're going to find their ancestors in the photos. But it's something that we can develop.
Did the Polish people do it for Nazis?
They didn't do it for Nazis, but they did it for Holocaust victims. So yeah, exactly. But it was the idea that Nordos brought up, and then Inspired also independently came up with this idea because she posted about lynching, and that went viral. And it was kind of like, she was like, we need a tool for this as well. And my superpower is technology. I've built things like the robocalls that can do 100K calls in a day, for example. And now I'm like, well, let's build this. We don't need to have Google engineers build this for us. We have the skill sets within the Freedmen community to do it. And we could do it at a fraction of the cost because I'm not going to charge for labor. I'm just going to need donations so we can support the servers and the database to collect petabytes of data for these like millions of photos, for example. And so really it was kind of like a team effort. I give credit to Nordos, to Freedmen, to Inspired. And then just thinking, hey, we can identify lynchers and their living descendants, even if the lynchers may be still alive themselves, with public available data, as well as maybe data that gets shared with us on a voluntary basis. So yeah, it'll take about 3 to 6 months to build, and like a minimum of like $2,000, like $1,000 per server. But other than that, like for the amount of impact that this can have, that's like a drop in the bucket. So I'm just really excited, and the amount of application the software has to other cross things, like Freedmen just brought up. Well, we can use it for people who are not even lynched. Like maybe you had an ancestor that passed away, and you don't know who they are in your family tree, but we can find a photo of them and a photo of you and then match. So there's multiple things, multiple ways we can use this one software AI technology.
Yes, that's great. And I'm so glad you kind of gave me that overview because, like, personally, I've kind of always thought about, and this is in the context, people who say, oh, reparations for slavery, everyone is dead, you can't do that. Well, we know there's avenues around that argument, right? But then on the other side, well, okay, this is a little, I wouldn't say a little known argument because we know about it. But then, the argument could be, okay, well, there needs to be reparations for, Jim Crow, for Jim Crow victims and survivors, and for the descendants of Jim Crow victims and survivors, right? And so it's like, how do you go about that? Because, okay, that beats the naysayers who are saying, okay, you can't do reparations for slavery because no one's alive. So now they don't have an argument when you say, okay, let's just focus on Jim Crow then, right?
Right.
But then, like, that also begs the question of the mechanics. So I'm super intrigued that, I didn't even really think about the technology. Technology is huge. It's instrumental. That's a really good way to hold, Jim Crow perpetuators, like Nazi perpetrators, accountable. But then I was thinking, like, part of me, for years, I was like, what if I went down to the South and, like, was on my, like, detective shit? Like, it would be extremely dangerous. And this is where technology, I think, helps because you don't have to get so close. But I always thought, like, what if, like, I like a documentary or something. I, like, went down South with my detective shit, like, went to dangerous ass areas in the South with white people, started asking questions, or brought a white person along to serve it in my stead if it was too dangerous or something. Just started collecting questions and evidence of, like, okay, could we get someone to admit, oh yeah, in 19-some, I lynched someone. In 19-some, I helped to murder this black boy or this black girl, or I did this church bombing. You know what I'm saying? Like, I always wondered, it's like we got to capture these perpetrators, like Germany did Nazi perpetrators before they died. So yeah, we need to acknowledge the victims, the survivors of Jim Crow, and by victims and survivors of Jim Crow, I'm talking about Black American descendants of slaves. But we also need to identify the perpetrators against us before they die, and they're dying every day. So that's what I think. Because also, if we help to identify them, because that's another thing. People say, oh, these images are in black and white and on purpose to make it seem like this is so far away. No, they're still living today. But because we live in a racist country, there is no political will to identify them. In the same way as there is political will in Germany to identify Nazi perpetrators. That's why, a couple weeks ago, a 101-year-old German Nazi got arrested for the Holocaust, and you have Carolyn, who the grand jury refused to indict. So I guess I'm rambling because there was another question I wanted to ask. Oh yeah, I guess my roundup question is like, okay, so let's say you guys, you have this technology that helps to identify. I guess I have two questions. Is this technology gonna, like, what is the verification process? So like, let's say the technology identifies, well, how is a technology going to identify a white person in their youth, let's say in the 1930s and 40s, and then match it to someone who's obviously going to be way older today?
Yeah.
And then the second part is like, what is the second step of the verification process look like? So how can you be for sure that this technology is correct in identifying the people? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So I'll speak to it two ways, and then I'll go to the other points. Really great contributions, by the way. So when it comes to how the dude did it for the Google engineer did it for the Holocaust victims, how he did it is he provided 10 potential matches, and he added a score based on the features, like the how likely it is that they are matches. Now, I'll give you kind of analogies to make it make a little more sense. Basically, as you build up the database of like previous or old photos of lynchers and like living people today, whether they be descendants or the lynchers themselves, basically what you do with the AI, it goes through and it builds up a feature set for each face. It builds up like, what are the common features in this face? What are the unique features in this face? What are the unique features in this face? And then it does the same thing for all the living people, and then it says what are the facial features, what are the unique features in all of those faces. Then you process that by matching them between them. Now, you mentioned like how you're able to identify someone young and who's now maybe older, etc. This is where, if y'all remember, I think it was called Reface. There was a tool that would take your picture and make you older. Do y'all remember that? Or take your picture and you could make yourself younger. Y'all remember that tool? It went viral like last year. Everyone was showing like, or a year or two ago, everyone was showing like old photos.
Snapchat or Instagram, one of those filters.
Yeah, but it was an app that was specifically developed that had the best version of it.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so basically, what that software does, it maintains. I mean, and it was pretty accurate, in terms of how it worked, because it's based on. Oh, you found it. Thank you. But basically, the goal behind it is to take your features and then you can actually advance them over time based on how older people look. And it's really the same thing. So you could take a photo of like a kid, like in a lynching photo, and then you could advance it too and look at what they may potentially look like now, 67 years later, for example, or however longer later. And then you can use that to then match that with photos of of that older person today, for example. And so it is a process where you have to do like multiple levels of, of computing, but you can have at least a score. That's why I like that they had a rating score and they showed you like a portfolio of potentials, and then you could move forward on those results to confirm them. They mentioned using the United States Holocaust Museum. It was a USHMM. We have the African American History Museum, and we have others that have photos of lynchings and all of this. So we can use their catalogs as well, in addition to publicly available information. But it's really the magic comes into the software, both in finding the feature sets and then also running an aging algorithm to be able to age to match as well. So that was a great question. So I really appreciate that. And also what you mentioned about going into the South and kind of like, AI helped kind of like save you because you don't have to risk your life. If you go back to Ida B. Wells, she was doing the same thing. She was going back into all these dangerous areas where people were lynched, and as we know, she was getting run out of towns. Her life was being threatened. All of that. So she went and really put her life on the line to get these stories, right? Because if you're asking questions about the lynchers, these people have no problem killing people, right? Like by definition. So obviously her life was much in danger. So like we have to commend her. That's actually why we named Ida B. Tubman after Ida B. Wells and Harriet Tubman, right? Two freedmen queens who really were on the front lines, right? Harriet Tubman had to put her life on the line as well. So you know, I think AI does give us this skill set, so you know, helps it be safer. Let's say that.
Right. Let me just add this really quick to Diamond and to Freedmen. So when you're doing the AI and it gives you possible matches, what I found while I am doing some research here in Louisiana of lynchings, that the names are purposely not mentioned. A lot of the people, they would bring them to court, the judges would hide their names. But say we get some matches with the AI tool, then we can take those names and then do research where those lynchings happened.
Definitely.
So those are cross-references that we can use, you know, when we're doing the work. But I just wanted to add that.
Most definitely. And actually, Free One brought this point up yesterday when we were reading through the Freedmen's Bureau Act. The Freedmen's Bureau Act mentions the trustees, which were all white trustees who stole the $57 million in 1874, which is equivalent to $1.3 trillion today, right? So he mentioned a great, phenomenal idea. We can take those names and find who their living descendants are, right? Because they were living high off the hog off of that 1.3 trillion. You know what I mean? So ain't no excuse. They're probably heads of banks today and heads of you know, other financial institutions or other companies and businesses. I would be surprised if we find no one mentioned in there and their descendants don't have wealth today. I would be very surprised. But yeah, totally.
Well, you got to look at some of the companies that's right in our face, like Johnson Johnson, a lot of the life insurance companies, the ones that's, you know, big names, because they come from old money, especially if they were created in like 1820, 1812, like right there. And then also too, some of these grocery stores, right? Because they're not the original names of what they were first named off of, right? Because our land, our food, everything was stolen from us. So that right there, like I think Tops, like forget like Giant Eagle, like all these, like they got like the oldest names. So it'll be easier. It's easier once it's said and done. But it's just waiting for people like us just to talk about it.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Sav, one of the things that we learned when we interviewed the family of Emmett Till, Priscilla Sterling, and Daryl, we learned that the store, because it's always talked about that there was this store that they went in to buy, Emmett went in to buy bubble gum, and you know, then he apparently whistled at her, blah, 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 right? Now, what was revealed to us in this interview that we did with FNN, that store was a plantation store. Plantation stores were instrumental in perpetuating sharecropping, which was a way for the plantation to charge a certain tax and for them to conspire with the plantation stores, which they usually invested in or owned themselves, and to match the price that you would get, the revenue that you would get for your share of the crop with the cost of the tools and the implements that you used, because we weren't given reparations, right? And they basically X'd it out, so we never had a profit, right? If you control, Sean Rochester, who wrote The Black Tax, he says something that's completely obvious. If you control the revenue and the cost, you can control the profit, right? By definition, profit equals revenue minus the cost, right? And you only make a profit if your revenue is greater than your cost. So they understood this and they manipulated these systems. And you can imagine these so-called plantation stores turned into Vaughn's and turned into Albertsons and turned into et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not like these places just went away all of a sudden. No, they either rebranded or they kept the same name and took off the plantation store part, right? So there's a huge through line to this. Lloyd's of London, they insured ships that transported our ancestors over here, right? And when slavery was going on, our ancestors were insured. And actually, the modern term of mortgage is about death. Mortality, death. Mortgage was about, before it was about homes, it was primarily used for slaves. You could take out a mortgage on slaves, right? And the mortgage was based on the life expectancy of slaves, hence the word mortgage, right? Because it was based on the predicted life value that they were going to bring to that slave owner. So We have to make these
I
connections.
said this at my job once, and they all looked at me like crazy. It was like, I don't think it worked. I was like, well, I don't think y'all know the history of insurance. I thought I was going to get fired that day, but nah, they let me go.
Hey, that's hilarious. Yeah, no, you're speaking the truth, and these things are hard to swallow because they're uncomfortable facts, right? The fact that we were owned, the fact that we were insured, and the fact that we were even rented out when slave owners couldn't find anything to do with the slaves. They would rent them out to people who couldn't own slaves but could afford to rent them. They had Ubers and Airbnbs for slavery. You know what I mean? So these ideas aren't new. They all were. The entire capitalist system was built around slavery, right? And the reason capitalism is failing today is because not everyone has capital. You can't have a capitalistic society if everyone wasn't given the capital, right? Especially people who worked for 400 or 256 years and weren't paid, or their descendants. And just to go back to the diamond, or the stone that the builder refused, when you were mentioning, how they complain about Jim Crow laws and how we are not slaves and we can't claim what happened to them. If we go to the definition, I'll pull it up really quick, of both reparations and genocide. I'll pull it up because we just updated our website, so it's good to just pull it up so we can just show it. But there's no statute of limitations on genocide, excuse me, and there's no statute of limitations on murder. There's no statute of limitations on violations of humanitarian law and international humanitarian law. So let's pull it up, and let's show you guys what it actually says and how we can use the United Nations and the U.S. definitions around genocide in our advantage, and the definition behind reparations. Okay, so now this is the website. Let's let it load. So,
Can I make a point?
Yeah, totally.
You talked about like revenue, not over, or you want revenue to be more than cost. Expenses not really outweighing your revenue. So there's, you're always in the green, not the red, right? All these terms that our government, or especially the administrators won't recognize right now, right? Our government is spending way too much, and we're sending little checks. I say little checks because that's how they're making it seem like it's no big deal,
right,
that we're just spending and sending billions and billions of dollars
to
Ukraine,
a country
that's not doing anything for us.
Right.
I mean, other than the resources that they're stealing and depleting from that country, that's a whole other conversation. But inflation alone, it's crazy, right? And they won't acknowledge it. They won't say that it's inflation because, when you look at their salaries, they're constantly increasing their salaries. They're constantly paying and doing out, different little expenditures for pleasure. Like if y'all seen their budget just for plants,
right?
Y'all seen their budgets for haircuts. If y'all seen the budget, just for little leisure, little things that they have, like y'all would be sick.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of just really sickening when you look at the amount of inflation that's about to hit the economy, and just another reason why reparations is so dire. And just at this very point, like we don't have it to be more to widen the wealth gap. We can't afford it. So yeah.
Definitely agree. Let me just add this one part about reparations and genocide, the UN definitions, and then I'll go to the stone that the builder refused. So, okay, this is how reparations are defined by the United Nations. Adequate, effective, and prompt reparation is intended to promote justice by redressing gross violations of international human rights law or serious violations of international humanitarian law. And it's defined by restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and discontinuation. So they say restitution should, whenever possible, restore the victim to the original situation where the gross violations of international human rights law or serious violations of international humanitarian law occurred. Restitution includes, as appropriate, restitution of liberty, enjoyment of human rights, identity, family life, and citizenship, return to one's place of residence, which includes our 40 acres that were confiscated, and restoration of employment and return of property. So the Freedmen's Bank, the 57 million, which is now 1.3 trillion, And then it also includes compensation. Compensation should be provided for any economically accessible damage as appropriate and proportional to the gravity of the violation and the circumstances of each case resulting from gross violations of international human rights law and serious violations of international humanitarian law, such as A, physical or mental harm, B, lost opportunities, including employment, education, and social benefits, C, material damages and loss of earnings, including loss of earning potential, D, moral damage, E, costs required for legal or expert assistance, medicine and medical services, and psychological and social services. Rehabilitation should include medical and psychological care as well as legal and social services. And satisfaction should include, basically, I'm going to read all of it. Basically, us as the aggrieved party should be satisfied, right? And then discontinuation is guarantees of non-repetition. Basically, they can't give us reparations, then start committing genocide again, and then get mad that we want reparations and genocide to stop again. You know, like they can't do that. And then so let me go to the last part on genocide, and then I'll go to the hands. So on genocide prevention, read through that really quickly. So this is the United Nations definition of genocide. So, 1 second. Okay. So in the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group as such. Killing members of that group, we make up the highest percentage of law enforcement killings and hate crime killings by percent of the population. Physical and mental harm, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of that group. So we have the mass incarceration disparities, sentencing disparities, overprescription of drugs and torture. And then we have apartheid, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. So that's apartheid in food and water, in education, in housing, employment, finance. I could go on. Extermination, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, which includes our disproportionately high abortion rate. It includes the hysterectomy rate, which is the removal of the uterus. And then it also includes the infant mortality rate and the maternal mortality rate during abortions and while giving birth, which is the highest amongst freedmen. And then family separation, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group, right? So that's shout out to there's an amazing California Reparations Task Force, AB 3121, in their interim report, and we actually draw from that and use it as one of the diagrams we use for family separation. But there's three: child welfare, child protective services, and foster care, which most people usually think they're all the same thing, but they're not. In the AB 3121 interim report, they reference that out of all the money given to for child welfare, blacks get 3%, right? In terms of child protective services, freedmen are 77% more likely to have their children removed, even though they're in a similar situation as a white family. And then in terms of foster care, even though we represent about 14% of the population in the United States, we're disproportionately represented in foster care. Basically, we're twice as likely or twice as much overrepresented in the foster care system than we should be. So all of those amount to genocide, and there's no statute of limitation. So to the stone that the builder refused, this point about Jim Crow laws and slavery, we can use genocide as an over-encompassing that connects from 1619, or if you want to use 1776 till now. We've experienced genocide. The first part was slavery, but genocide continued post-emancipation under different means. If we go to the statistics around lynchings and massacres, physical and mental harm, apartheid, extermination, and family separation, they attack us in different ways, and they attack different parts of the Freedmen family. So in lynching and massacres, if you look at the police killing rates, black men are far more disproportionately killed by the police in hate crimes than Black women, right? Out of 1,553 police killings since like 2016, Black men made up 1,500 of them, and Black women made up 53 of them, right? But if you go to extermination, right, that's where they attack Black women, right? The high abortion rate, the high infant mortality and maternal mortality and hysterectomy rate. So they attack freedmen women with extermination, and they attack freedmen children with family separation through the child welfare, child protective service, and foster care system, right? So if we look at mental and physical harm and apartheid, that attacks us as a whole, right? But we just got to understand the disparities and how they are just breaking down where the attack zones are. They can't put us all in slavery, so they attack us this way. They attack our children, freedmen children this way, and they attack our freedmen queens another way. So all of these have no statute of limitation, and we can use them to prosecute for our reparations from whether we use 1619 or 1776. We can prosecute our genocide through slavery till today, and make sure we're paid reparations, as we talked about, following the UN definition of reparations. And I love that the law put into place for AB 3121 states that it must comport with standards of international and humanitarian law. So with that, I'll shut up and pass to the stone/diamond that the builder refused.
Stone, thank you. No, this is super great. I just wanted to share just some relevant findings from the interim report of the task force. So in terms of lynchings, and we know this already, so it's like preaching to the choir.
Right.
Over 90% of lynching victims in this country are Black American descendants of slaves. And then also in the report, less than 1% of the perpetrators of lynchings have actually been prosecuted.
Wow.
So this is why this conversation is so relevant, because that is just a travesty that
Definitely.
less than 1% of lynchers have been prosecuted, and obviously over 90%, the overwhelming majority of those who've been lynched, probably close to 99% of those who have been lynched in this country have been Black American descendants of slaves. Another data point that I wanted to raise, that's somewhat relevant but not. In the report, there's also a finding that millions of white families, white folks, got free land.
Yep.
Via the California Homestead Act and the Federal Homestead Act. And so the living descendants of those white folks who got those free land grants still benefit from that today, because African Americans, they were excluded from the California Homestead Act and the Federal Homestead Act. And so even further, the report finds that that's nearly 1/4 of the U.S. adult population. So 1/4, 25% of the U.S. adult population, which are white folks, still benefit from their ancestors getting that free land. So it's another maybe side project is that, and maybe this is another potential side project is, okay, let's locate the descendants of these people who got free land.
Yep.
Yes. From these Homestead Acts. And I'm just kind of genuinely curious, because I'm sure a lot of them are the main ones online in their spaces talking about Black folks don't deserve reparations. Meanwhile, they got some shit for free, or their ancestors got some shit for free, and they still benefited from it. So it's calling out those contradictions, through media, through video or something like that. But how would that look like? You going through the paperwork to see who white folks got land from these acts. Then you're doing the due diligence to find their descendants, and then you're confronting their descendants. Look, you got free land. We were excluded from that. Do you support reparations? And if not, this is why you should. Why do you deserve free shit? And you just came on this land, and our ancestors toiled for 246 years. So it's in this next 5, not even 10 years, 5 years, I want us to evolve and take up the mantle of Martin Luther King. He was all about direct action And it's like what I see this space doing, what I see you doing, Freedmen Party, is like marrying direct action with technology. And I think that's just really dope.
Thank you so much for that. And just to add to what you said, I was going back through, this had come up, State Power was mentioning like how Mormons had land and stuff. And then I went and looked up, I'm like, you know what, these Mormons probably got the Homestead Act. They probably benefited from that. So I looked it up and I found it is basically true. They benefit from the Homestead Act. And then when I was looking it up, I came across the NPS.gov, National Park Service.gov. And they have a quote. It says 93 million living descendants of the Homestead Act, which we know were like 99% colonial Americans. You know what I mean? So I saw the number that was quoted, 46 million living descendants of the Homestead Act. That 93 million is 100% increase from that number, right? So 93 million. And then what it made me also think about was, out of the U.S. Census, there's about 200 million people who are considered white based on how the U.S. Census defines white, which includes people from North Africa and people from the Middle East. So what I was able to do, just how we are trying to delineate and disaggregate our data, I was able in a way to disaggregate and delineate this colonial data for white people. So there's 93 million colonial white people basically in the country. And out of the 200 million who answered on the census, there's basically 100 million of them, right, that are immigrants or, Black or African American in North Africa or the Middle East, right? So that definitely helps. And the NPS, National Park Service, and federal government has data on who received the Homestead Acts. So that is something we definitely can go back through and look at as well. And I love the idea of like asking them about reparations and putting the task to them, because like you're right, these are the same people who tell us to pull ourselves up by our own bootstrap. And as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. pointed out, it's like these, like, well, the same time that we were denied our 40-acre land allotments, they were receiving 160-acre land allotments, right? So 4 times the amount of land that we were given and taken away, they got to keep. And it's something like 93 million of them that's still benefiting from that wealth transfer, a wealth transfer from our federal government, us, the government, giving them bootstraps to lift themselves up, to now tell us without our boots to lift ourselves up by our bootstraps, right? It's just ridiculous. And so it's amazing that we have the information, and what we need to do is move forward proactively to get the justice we deserve. The information is there. The fortunate thing about this capitalistic country is we have receipts. So they kind of shot themselves in their own foot. They got ledgers and receipts and accounts and all of that.
Yeah, one of the things that we have to remember, and I think she's gone out of the space, Grace Jones, but I think she mentioned there is a actual atone for some of the things that they did, and what. Anyway, I digress. I'm so excited that everybody is excited too. But I wanted to bring up, these were postcards. A lot of the lynching documentation that we have, they were taking pictures to commemorate their lynching. Mm-hmm. And so there was I think it's Berhart, which I think is a Jewish name. I'm not sure, but it's BEIRHART was one of the companies that was printing these postcards. Mm-hmm. To me, that's civilly some type of. But anyway, he was printing these things and selling them back to the lynchers. So they were keeping these as memorabilia, photographic evidence, of their crime. And this is amazing. This is amazing that we can't have a prosecution of one person. So I just wanted to say that these were postcards, so that they were taken to commemorate their activity, and it's horrible.
See, that's crazy that
exactly.
You said that, because I guess with myself, because when I was talking about, maybe, having them brand their family albums, I was going to say Christmas cards, but I was like, why would I say Christmas card? It's crazy. But no, they was really sending Christmas cards.
And don't forget the KKK was founded on Christmas in 1865.
Yes.
So it's not like they don't like tying these things to try to absolve their sins, right? Now, one of the things that's like super important about all of this, we have the receipts, and what we need to do is not rely the same way we shouldn't rely. That's why I love Darity, for example. Darity didn't wait for some commission to figure out how much we're owed in reparations, right? The same way we need to do for these cases. Open all these code cases and then bring the data we have rather than waiting for that data to be brought to us. And then just in terms of um, where we're moving forward, really we just need to raise money for the donations and then give us 3 to 6 months to put in the work, and we'll post updates and let people know how we're progressing. Um, but really, like, you'll be able to participate in this. So if you have photos that you want to upload, you can do that. And the great thing you mentioned, Inspired, about the postcards are some of those postcards have names and addresses on them.
Yes.
So that'll help even more. So yeah, great point.
And I posted something because I know the diamond. I can't read it. Y'all know I'm driving. I'm so sorry. But she mentioned about land. Henry Peg, and I posted it in the jumbotron because I want everybody. If you haven't heard about Henry Peg, I want everybody to take a moment just to look at that YouTube video. 110 acres of land. They stole, illegally lynched him and stole. He had nothing to do with whatever they accused him of. And his family, living descendants, have, documented his lynching. Gut wrenching, and it's one of the things that started me on my journey with this lynching thing that happened to our people. But it's real, 110 acres. Someone has to atone for that.
Exactly. When people say like we're not farmers or we're not this or we're not that, we were the blacksmiths, we were the farmers, we were all of these skills. And so actually, one of the things I like to kind of somewhat joke about, you know what I mean? But if you go from like 1619 to like 1865, the black unemployment rate was 0%. You know what I mean? So why did it jump to the highest percent of the population after 1865? Well, it was a way to continue our genocide through financial apartheid, keeping us away from gaining financial access and wealth so that we wouldn't have to participate in the sharecropping system, right? So all of these things are, immensely connected. I think it's also important for us to recognize that these people, like, if there is 93 million living descendants, that's a lot of people who probably might have lynched someone on their land or on their property. So kind of what we're doing by looking at even at the homestead side of this, we'll be able to cross-reference that with the lynchings to find out, well, where were the people who were colonial Americans living, right? To then narrow down our search, and be able to find out where they may be today. So definitely, this is just super great contributions y'all added. Um, we've been in here for almost 2 hours. I do want to start winding down and give people a chance to give any last thoughts, comments, or questions.
I just want to say, if you haven't recently visited the Freedmen Party's website, I mean, it's amazing work that the chairman is doing. We're so, I know the ancestors sent us this person that is so savvy when it comes to programming, and he is such a blessing. And I'm just take a look at the website. There's so much great information. The boot camp. If you know anybody that's thinking about running for office, those are really great things. But and just share the Cash App, and peace, love, and blessings to everybody.
Thank you for that so much, Inspired. Really means a lot. Yeah, like I said, this is what I feel like is the most important work I could be doing. Building up the Freedmen Party, making sure we get the justice we deserve. Building up the Freedmen News Network, building up our own Freedmen Super PAC soon. And then things like this just gives us more fuel to our fire, because it really feels like we're doing something that will have a meaningful impact. And the fact that we could see an example with the Holocaust and what this Google engineer did using AI, it just goes to show that this is possible. and we can have similar results, if not better, because we have a longer track, a longer history. So there's more and more data points that we can use, and it's really this AI challenge is a problem of collecting data and having the more data you have, the better, basically, and the more accurate your matches are. So because the Holocaust is a shorter time period, we'll have even more photos that we can dig up, more postcards, wherever we need to get the information from to do this analysis, whether it be public or private. Um, all we just need is data and put it in this database. So if y'all can, please donate to our Cash App. We'll set up a GoFundMe soon, but in the meantime, you can use the Cash App right now. And then other than that, we're obviously working on this Freedmen Party boot camp. The boot camp is a way to get candidates, seasoned to run for office. You know what I mean? We've been having a lot of unseasoned people running for office, if you know what I mean. Examples that are positive that we can use to follow in their footsteps. We got Marcel, we got Tamara, Reverend Somerville, Camilla Moore, and Shirley Weber. They kind of showed us the way in terms of freedmen that were willing to put their lives on the line and their reputations on the line to get what we need accomplished. And we need millions of them running for office, hundreds of thousands, like Harriet Tubman Pistol said. The Justice Democrats, they had 10,000 people nominated. Out of that 10,000, they endorsed about 2,000. And out of that 2,000, only one person won, right? Now, I think we can have a way better batting average than 1 out of 10,000. So it's, in my opinion, it's something that we want, obviously, the biggest funnel we can have, but the better, I think we did a good job with the boot camp. So that could help increase our batting average so we can get, way more people elected. There's 435 people in the House, 100 people in the Senate. You got the president and vice president, and you got tons of offices locally and at the state level. Now, I always like to bring up Reconstruction. During Reconstruction, we had 2,000 elected freedmen in office. 2,000, right? And during that time, we had an 80% voter turnout, right? Today, we have about 60% voter turnout. And the highest since Reconstruction was during 2000 and 2012, 2008 and 2012 when we got finessed by Obama, right? So we need to get back to those historical Reconstruction voting levels. And that would allow us, with our voting block of 32 million freedmen, to get anything accomplished. The last presidential election was decided by 7 million votes. When you look at most districts and how people are elected in the House or even on the state level, there's many seats that we can attack. So we already know we can go after the CBC. There's about 60 people in this Congressional Black Caucus, but we actually did an analysis this past week and looked at all the 435 districts and their demographics, and we were able to find that there's 6 other seats that have Black majority districts or more Blacks than whites in that district that are not held by freedmen or even the CBC, right? So that's about almost 60, over 60, almost 70 seats that we could have in Congress at bare minimum, right? So we need to fire the CBC, hire freedmen who are on code, fighting for our repair, fighting for our reparations, people we can introduce legislation to, and we're not just asking the kindness of strangers because they have our interests in mind. So definitely support our efforts. We have our GoFundMe for the app that we're trying to build, basically turning our website into an app where it'll be way easier to organize and it'll feel like a social network. Political parties are essentially mirrors of the government and social networks. Basically, that's what they are. So we're going to basically build our own Freedmen Party app that has all the same tools that we have on the website, but in app form. And then we have our Freedmen Super PAC. We need to raise at least $1,000 to qualify for the FEC to get registered. And then we have what we're trying to do for 2024. We're trying to raise $1 million to support the candidates that go through our boot camp and get endorsed to help fund their campaign so that they can have the best chance at winning. And we want to make sure that we have thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, I would love, of freedmen running for office, right? So please support the party. You can join the party if you'd like as well. But yeah, let me give everyone some last thoughts before we get up out of here. I'll go to Sav, then the stone that the builder refused, then inspired, then freed one.
Yeah, no, just, thank you again for the space, and thank you everyone for sharing again so eloquently. Just, with my testimony alone, and my mom and my siblings, being forced in foster care, child separation, my mom was also forcibly sterilized, like, listening to all these different things, like, I'm getting better and better about just understanding my story and not necessarily getting angry and getting in that defeatist victim mindset, because again, it's not over. We still got a lot to fight for. Again, I'm pretty sure everybody in here got something that they can attest to when it comes to looking at different points of how genocide has been perpetuated against them, and you also feel just as angry. So again, remember, breathe, protect your mental health, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you for that, Sav. I'm sorry to hear that. And those are two acts of genocide: the family separation and the extermination. And one of the things I actually learned when I was going through Fannie Lou Hamer documentaries, Fannie Lou Hamer was forcibly, she had a forced hysterectomy while she was undergoing routine tumor surgery. They performed a hysterectomy on her while she was having that surgery, which was unconsensual, right? Not consensual. So that just goes to show you they will try to stop. They tried to stop the creation of more Fannie Lou Hamers. She did have at least one child, but the fact that they performed this hysterectomy prevented her from having more children. So these are acts of genocide, and we need to recognize them as such and make sure that they are prosecuted in this justice system. Actually, let's go to Cyber Woman, and then we'll go to the Stone of the Beautiful Fuse. Then I love Dan Freeman.
Hi, thank you so much for throwing me the mic. Again, I've gotten so much valuable information in your space. Freedmen Party, actually check your messages too. I sent you a text earlier. And if you don't mind, when you close this room, there is another room that I was telling them about all of the discoveries that you all have made and how you're able to disaggregate the information and find out where we have a great probability of winning elections. When you close this room, if you would come over into that room and tell those people about it as well. Everybody's ready to hear your information. I did post your page about the Freedom News Network and the Jumbotron. And a lot of us are just tired, sad, and mad. And I think we're ready to make some valuable moves. But the name of the room may have changed. If you know Wani or son of Khalid, they're in that room. But yeah, thank you again for all this information. It's been just great.
Hey, thank you, Cyberwoman, for the compliments. Shout out to our amazing Freedmen Party members, people like Freed One, Inspired. And what's amazing is that, what we do together by just coming together, like we looked at the value of a vote, right? That's like $90 per voter. If we take $90 times 32 million, that's a voting block worth $3 billion. And Michael Bloomberg in 2020 spent $1 billion and lost in the primary. So it just goes to show you that the value and the leverage that we can have if we come together. So I'll definitely check out that room. definitely know who Wani is, and thank you for bringing it to our attention. And I'll make sure I respond to your DM. So thank you for the message. Um, let's go to um, Harriet's pistol, then we'll go to the stone that the bitter refused.
Peace, our reparations family. You struck gold again. Hey, look, man, I appreciate you holding this space. You already know I'm not even gonna go into it, man. And like, man, forget that. Yes, I am. Look, more people need to be coming to your space, bruh. Yo, man, bruh. I'm gonna need that. The woman about the Mormons owning the land, having that free land. I really need that information. I want to share it with my auntie Yaya because she really wanted that information because they have all of our records and it's time to pull up on them. They need to give us our records. No, but we're not about to pay y'all. We don't care if it's a free whatever. No, we want the records, the real records. No, we want them. We don't want y'all to be hosting a website. No, we'll host a website.
Exactly.
So, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's where it's at right now. You know what I'm saying? So, I appreciate you holding this space, educating our brothers and sisters about this Freedmen knowledge because this is where it's at. We know that race can't hold up in court. They did all this racist stuff to us to tell us that race can't hold up in court. So clearly now we're using the status, the Freedmen status.
Ooh, my bad. I was trying to throw you a heart, bro. Keep going.
So we're using the Freedmen status because, like being I'm a Navy veteran, and that's a status. A veteran is a political status, and it gives me certain set asides to like the GI Bill or medical or what have you. Well, Freedmen does the same thing.
Yep.
And that's how we can cut through red tape. It's already on the books. And like I said, excellent content. Y'all, please share this in space. And please, yes, we definitely need to educate more of our people about this. And yes, I love what y'all do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Harriet, for the kind words. I did think about should we do a funny troll title again, but we just gonna stick with it, and people will come along. Sometimes you just gotta forge the path, and people will come along with you and catch up. You know what I mean? And I think most people are starting to realize this as well. And I definitely noticed the growth in interest and support. So it's getting better, and it's going to improve over time. Just imagine where we'll be a year from now. You know what I mean? So yeah, one step at a time. Thank you, though. Let's go to the stone that the builder refused, and then inspired and freedom.
I'm just here listening. Thank you for the space. Looking forward to more conversations. Thanks so much.
Thank you for being here. It really means a lot. You certainly are the stone that the builder refused. And so, shout out to you. I'll just call you Diamond for now.
We all are. We all are the stone that the builder refused. Yes. And if you read the rest of the verse, the stone that the builder refused shall be the head cornerstone.
Yeah.
So the Sheila Jackson Lees, the Narcs, and Cobras, they're the so-called builders that are refusing us as in terms of lineage-based reparation. So we have to keep going because we shall be the head cornerstone. That's prophecy right there.
Yeah. Yes. It's a powerful prophecy. I might have first heard it on Boondocks, but it is real deep, and it goes back to the book. So definitely understand that we were meant to be here. And actually, I like to draw a lot of analogies to the Abrahamic religions in terms of certain events that were significant. So, for example, Passover was the celebration, or is the celebration, of Jews being free from slavery. The closest thing we have to that is Juneteenth, right? But the other part of this is you have Easter. Easter was a remembrance of Jesus, who was celebrating Passover and then was murdered and then resurrected 3 days later, right? So when people tell us not to get over slavery and to get over all these things, the Abrahamic religions have Passover and Easter that recognize the significance of slavery as well as the significance of justice that needs to be done for these atrocities. So I personally think Juneteenth is our the closest thing to our Passover, and I think when we get our reparations, it'll be celebrated at a very spiritual level because it'll be waiting for what I've started to realize: our 40 acres and a mule, our 40 acres, is our promised land, right? Our promised land is our 40 acres, referenced in Special Field Order 15. Actually, I'm going to pull that up real quick. It's mentioned both in Special Field Order 15 and it's mentioned in the Freedmen's Bureau Act. Um, and so I put up quotes on the website that reference that. I'm actually going to read it really quick because it's so important that we make these spiritual connections. And you don't even have to be religious to kind of understand the significance of this, right? Just understand that we've been through a huge atrocity. 400 years. The Jews in Egypt were enslaved for 400 years. You know what I mean? So we got to understand these numbers and the fact that the cycles that we're going through are not accidental at all. Um, I also found it interesting that the HR 40 has been in Congress for about 32 years, just stagnating. And at the end of this decade, like 2030, it'll be 40 years. So 40 years of wandering in the desert in the wilderness without getting anything accomplished, right? So here's the definition of our promised land, right? So each family, this is from Special Field Order 15, each family shall have a plot of not more than 40 acres of tillable ground, and the military authorities will afford them protection until such time as they can protect themselves. And then in the Freedmen's Bureau Act, it says, freedmen shall be assigned not more than 40 acres, and the person to whom it was so assigned shall be protected in the use and enjoyment of the land. Two independent mentions of our 40 acres that we deserve as freedmen. In fact, even as we read through the Special Field Order 15, it was clear that no other people should be on our land. And if you go back to the meeting with Sherman that we reviewed yesterday as well, it says, how would you, Sherman asked, how would you like to live, scattered amongst the whites or in colonies by yourselves? And Garrison Frazier, who was one of the 20 freedmen there, and the one who was elected to represent them, he said, I believe we should have our own colonies, our own land, because there's a prejudice against us that will take years to get over. Out of the 20 freedmen there, 19 out of 20 agreed with Garrison Frazier. 95% agreed. Only one person, ironically named Mr. Lynch, disagreed. So I just think we got to realize we're living the consequences of those actions today, right? We're scattered amongst the whites, and we don't have our 40 acres. We don't have reparations. So really what we're going back to is reconstruction to finish the job that wasn't done. You can't start reconstruction on a house and then think you're done because you stopped, right? That means you're going to have holes and rain falling through your house because you didn't finish reconstruction. You got holes in your roof. You don't even got a door. You don't got windows. You know what I mean? So it's something we got to finish. Let's go to Inspired, then Freed One, and then we'll start to close out.
I'm just so excited about the AI technology and also us bringing our lynching, our history, what was done to us, and we want accountability, to come. My goal, my vision is everywhere that there is a lynching all across this land, in your areas, research them, get as much information as you can, and that's what we should start. Just start researching it. If you can bring that information to your city council, to the town halls, to your mayors, do that. And get local representation is so important, to be in those rooms, so that when our sacred burial sites, they're building on our freedmen burial sites. They're giving the land that was stolen from us. They're building casinos and all kind of chemical plants on these things. We need people also in the political process in the local area as well, also at the federal and state level. But that's everything. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you again, Inspire, for co-hosting, and also thanks for, helping inspire this space with the tweet that you sent out about lynching that went viral. Um, it's important that we speak about these things and we don't give up. Freed one, it's on you. You there, Free one? Free one's on the East Coast. It's like 10 o'clock there, so he may be asleep. You knocked out, Free one? You probably knocked out. But no.
I wanted to say one thing that Sav said, the revolution will be televised, and how she connected this type of technology, and that just has stuck with me. And I don't know if we're going to name our space as we discuss this about the revolution, the televised revolution, but I really love it. Love it.
Yeah, it's like the revolution will not be televised. That's one of my favorite Gil Scott Heron. Like that was great, great, great work. But yeah, thank you all the speakers who came, Cyberwoman Sav, the Stone That the Builder Refused, Harriet, Inspired for co-hosting, the Free One for co-hosting. Get you some rest.
Somebody that's trying to quickly speak.
Yeah, Judge, did you want to say something before we get out here?
I want to ask a question real quick. I'm sorry I'm late. I hope I don't take up time. I have two questions. Can you tell me the significance of the triangle?
Yeah, it's twofold. One, we need three parts. We need the Freedmen Party, Freedmen News Network, and the Freedmen Super PAC, basically pooling our vote, our value, and our voices, right? And
Vote value voices.
yep, this is what Dr. King talked about in his last speech. That lost him his life through assassination and active genocide. Um, and then the other part is to remind us of our ability to create greatness, right? If you look at symbols in America, they're drawn from what we've created also in the past. So if you look at the Washington Monument, why is there the Washington Monument? Where does that come from? Things like that. So basically, just drawing on these to bring about understanding, to remind us of who we are, and to ingrain those three parts: voice, vote, and value, coming all together to get us to where we need to be in terms of getting our reparations and Freedmen reconstruction and genocide prevention.
That's great. And also, one more question, because you know what? You were instrumental in helping me get in contact with these people who were having the listening session. What I want to know from you, just kind of basically, how do you feel about the possibility of success of getting reparations in the state of California? Because I don't see it happening. I see it as being a carrot being dangled to ensure the vote for the Blue Party. Do you think that it's possible, or that they're actually working towards approving the reparations for people in California?
Yes, Yes, I do. I believe it's a good faith effort. Now, I'll give you my analysis. So, one, we love Queen Chairwoman Moore, who's helping push lineage-based reparations as chairwoman of the task force. So she Chairwoman Moore, Camilla Moore.
Oh, Camilla Moore, okay.
And then also Shirley Weber, who's Secretary of State of California. They are both two strong Freedmen queens who are help pushing this forward. Now, there is something I see politically on the horizon. You have the interim report just came out, right? The final report is due July 1st, 2023, so about a year, right? When that final report is due, there will be recommendations for reparations and what needs to be done. Now, the current governor of California is Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom is eyeing the 2024 presidential campaign. And what I predict, or what I foresee, is that he is going to try to, because he's been recalled twice, which means they tried to remove him from office twice, and he's only survived by the black vote. And so he knows this. He's like terrified because he could have been fired already. So that's why they pushed the AB 3121 through. And I believe between July 1st, 2023 and the 2024 primaries, at some point that reparations that the task force recommends will need to be issued for him to try to run on that in 2024. So he can't run on 2024 saying I did reparations if reparations aren't complete in California, right? So he's going to try to between July 1st, 2023 and the primaries in 2024, which is about like a little less than a year, to try to do lineage-based reparations in California, actually issue it. And then he's going to try, at least my prediction, is he will then try to run on a national presidential campaign saying he's going to do lineage-based reparations for the country. Now, I could be wrong, but that's my prediction based on how I see the political climate going. I think it'll be like Gavin Newsom versus a Trump DeSantis ticket. And yeah, that's basically how it'll most likely go. But that's my personal opinion.
Well, I understand because I just got the book from Hetero Quality, so I need to do more research. To be quite honest with you, I'm not building a part of the Black Party.
You're getting Matrix.
By hearing you guys talk about the reparations, and one of the things that so can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Because I previously I didn't have a strong interest in the reparations. My interest was more of the repair portion of that, not what is the first called, the restitution.
Mm-hmm.
But as I got more involved and started researching it, it's very clear that we're due reparations in many forms.
Yep.
Right? And so I can't speak as intelligently about it as I'd like to. I'm going to listen to the book.
Yes.
But based on what I know, okay, and what happens is, just in talking to you how you engage in corporate America, I know that you know.
Oh, you get Matrix again.
You dealt with the other man before. You know what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, I definitely think from here to equality is the Bible written by the reparations Bible.
Dealing with the other man. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. The book From Here to Equality by Kirsten Mullen and Dr. Darity. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of lag.
Yeah, I just got the book. So I'm gonna read it.
Yeah, definitely read it. It's an amazing book. Yes, I can hear you. Read it. It's an amazing book. Dr. Darity and Kirsten Mullen, his wife, they're amazing people. They wrote the Bible on this in terms of reparations, and we were honored to have them speak together on Father's Day and Juneteenth, which was the same day this year at our first national convention. So yeah, it was an honor, and they were just amazing. So please read that book. Anybody in here that doesn't have that book should go get From Here to Equality.
I am, and I kind of want to finish commenting so you understand where I'm coming from, because you feel optimistic about Governor Newsom. I do not. You said that the first report was in because one of the things that I'm trying to.
Yeah, Judge, you get. Yeah, Judge, you're kind of going in and out. But hey, Judge, we can have this Gavin Newsom conversation in the back channels, because I do want to give people a chance. But we already got Freedmen over here knocked out. You know what I mean? So I know people are getting tired.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Judge, hit me in the. It's hard to hear you.
I'm just really trying to finish my thoughts, but I keep being interrupted. May I finish my thoughts?
You keep getting caught in the Matrix. That's why.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I had it on Wi-Fi, but I took it off. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Because I want to be clear about what I hear you say, and I know you're making a great effort. I'm trying to share my insight because I believe this is a carrot that they're dangling. What I heard you say, he has from June of 2023 to the primaries in 2024 to authorize reparations. What I'm trying to say to you is I have my doubts about it because it's based on slavery. What I've read in that book is based on slavery. What I'm trying to say to you, I'm a victim of a hate crime in California. I'm a victim of a hate crime by the state of California. My story needs to be part of the investigation to demonstrate that Black people, descendants of slaves, are still being harmed by anti-Black codes in the government.
I'm in agreement with you, Judge. And what you should do is check out our policy page on genocide. And we talked earlier, you might have missed it, about how genocide encompasses everything from slavery till today. But please go through our policy page on genocide. I do want to wrap it up, but hit me in the back channel. We can keep this going. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Thank you again for all the amazing speakers, Cyberwoman, Judge Sav, Harriet, Inspired, my amazing co-host, and Freed1, who is getting his Z's in. Thank y'all for coming. Thank you all the listeners for being patient. We've been in here for 2 hours and 15 minutes, over 2 hours, 15 minutes. So y'all are true champions. If anybody missed anything, go back through the video and you can watch it. We live streamed it and we kind of shared documents and all that, so you can go back through. But really appreciate it. We'll be back here tomorrow, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern. Y'all have a blessed day and keep the fight going for reparations.